As Brandy laid lifeless on the floor, she hoped that this would be the last time. It would be the moment when she would die. This is her story.
I thought about my dad, about some of the things that he survived. And I thought how courageous he was. And I began to think about my children and how if I died, then who was going to take care of my children? And that's when I changed the way that I felt about myself. And I felt that I needed to be strong, that I needed to be as strong as my dad had been during his suffering as a prisoner of war. You know, I felt like I was a prisoner of war myself.
In April 1942, after the fall of the Philippine Islands to the Japanese, the captured prisoners of war were forced to march 60 miles north from the Bataan Peninsula to San Fernando. From there, they were transported by train to Capiz and then marched to their final destination, Camp O'Donnell. Brandy's father, Private Pete Mendoza, was among the 78,000 forced to march the 6-day journey. At the cruel hands of the Japanese, 11,000 POWs died during the march, and another 10,000 died from starvation, disease, torture, and execution. Private Mendoza was a prisoner at Camp O'Donnell for 3 years and 11 days.
And he was a survivor. He survived a catastrophe. And so he was my role model. My dad was brilliant.
Just as Brandy's hope for her children kept her alive, so did her father's hope for his family.
All his thoughts were on seeing his mother again and his brothers and sisters and coming home and doing good things for the people that lived here in America. As long as he kept thinking about the positive things going home, he felt that he was going to survive. He saw a lot of horrible things and he experienced a lot of horrible things.
The march itself was only the beginning of atrocities that the POWs experienced. Some of those who collapsed during the march were arbitrarily stabbed with a bayonet. If they didn't die immediately, the other soldiers were forced to bury them alive.
There were things that, that they were forced to do that were so horrible that they didn't want the rest of the world to know. But they did it because they had to survive somehow.
Women want a loving and caring husband. However, things were different in Brandy's marriage.
I married an abuser. I didn't know that he was an abuser when I met him.
One of the warning signs that a person could be an abuser is a whirlwind romance.
He actually stalked me into the marriage. I was married to him 13 days after I met him.
Brandy was the youngest of 10 siblings. She considered herself as spoiled with love and affection. It was a year and a half into the marriage that the verbal abuse began.
I'd never been abused. I'd never had anyone talk to me the way that he talked to me. The first time he ever physically abused me, it started with a slap. He slapped me in the face, and again, I was completely shocked because no one had ever done that to me.
When Brandy became pregnant, the abuse escalated. After Angela was born, Brandy summoned up the courage to ask for a divorce.
He looked at me, he put his arms around me, and he said to me, "Brandy, you're not going to get a divorce. I'm not giving you a divorce." And I said, "I can't live like this anymore. I don't know what you're going to do next."
Just as a captor will threaten the life of a fellow soldier to gain control, so too will an abuser.
He picked up a gun. I watched him as he loaded it, and he walked into Angela's room, my daughter's bedroom. She was 9 months old. He got behind her bed. She was bouncing up and down, looking at me. Behind her was her father. The gun pointed at one ear, the other hand holding the other ear, and saying to me, "Now, tell me that you leave her, that you leave me, and I'll blow her head off, and then yours, and then mine." and I fell at my husband's feet. I was hysterical, and I begged him, please don't kill my baby. Please don't kill her. I'll do anything that you say.
They remained married for another year and a half. Brandy had to develop coping skills to endure the continued abuse.
The day that he put the gun to Angela's head, all the love, all the hate, every feeling that I had for him died. I flatlined my feelings for him, and I no longer felt anything for him. I realized then that my children were just a pawn that he used to control me. So I stopped feeling anything for him.
The example that Brandy's father set was powerful and inspirational.
I reminded myself of what my father survived, and it gave me the courage to continue to try to save my children's lives and my life.
Brandy realized that through the abuse, she had much more in common with her father.
There are a lot of parallels between victims of domestic violence and prisoners of war. Actually, as a victim of domestic violence, you are being held captive. There's an imaginary chain link fence around you.
Often, the captor or the abuser are seen as a savior.
A person who is going to allow us to stay alive, who is going to take care of us. Because if that person, our captor, doesn't take care of us, we may perish.
There is a deep and profound reason that Brandy had the strength to get through the abuse.
Because I was his daughter. I had his genes. And he had been an example to me. And he came back. He made it back to America. He made it home. And he helped other people. And I felt myself that when I got out of my situation and I got back on my feet, I made a promise to myself that I would help other people.
Brandy's common bond with her father also reminded her of some important lessons he practiced.
When he came back, he didn't feel sorry for himself. And so I decided not to have a pity party either. I decided that instead what I was going to do is do something positive.
Forgiveness is an important part of moving beyond the bad experience. Brandy asked her father about his feelings towards the Japanese.
Oh, they were just doing their job that they were ordered to do, just like I was doing my job. When you forgive someone or someone has hurt you, it begins with a kind word. Take baby steps in trying to correct the hurt that happened to you and move on. Forgive them.
Brandy moved beyond the abuse to passionately help others. She was primarily responsible for getting the dating violence program included in the Violence Against Women Act, or better known as VAWA. This federal law enhances investigation and prosecution of violent crimes perpetuated against women. Brandy is often the key speaker at various conferences about domestic violence issues. She also serves on numerous community boards, has been the focus of documentaries, and featured on various television programs.
And I believe that's one of the reasons that I decided to do the work that I've been doing. And that is because they were my role models. They took something, and especially my dad, he took something horrible that had happened to him. And instead of wallowing in pity, he decided that he was going to do something positive with what he had learned in that prison camp.